All right, ladies and gentlemen of the Music Row Coach community, I'm here with my friend Lee Krabel, who is the VP of SMACKSongs, and we're going to have a little conversation today just kind of about the publishing world. Lee, tell everybody kind of what got you into publishing when you first came to Nashville, your background, fill them in.
Yeah, I'm originally from Chrisman, Illinois. Small town. It's 10 miles north of where Brett Eldredge is from. That's kind of our big star. And I, out of high school, I went to the Army, spent a few years in the Army, and then while I was in Iraq, I applied to go to Belmont University because I had some friends from back home that were moving to Nashville, including Brett was one of them. And so I decided that that could be a good path for me. I applied to Belmont University, got accepted, and moved here in June of 2006. I had a book that gave me the 100 best music business careers, and I read that, and I thought publishing sounded fun, so I tried to get some internships. My first internship was actually a management internship, which it was great though because I got to work with Little Big Town when they were first starting and some people like that. That ended up helping me get into the publishing business. But yeah, when I moved here, I wanted to be in publishing to work with songwriters, and that's kind of how I got to Gayle Music in 2009. Gave me my first job being a tape copy room guy, which is a job that doesn't exist anymore. As my first job in publishing.
The tape copy room. I've heard so many people talk about the tape copy room, and unfortunately for the new folks in town, they will never get to know that enjoyment.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very
Making
cool.
copies.
Yep. Who was, as far as maybe even before you got here or in Nashville, who were some of the first songwriters that you were conscious of?
I mean, I didn't know songwriters in general until I moved here, I would say. I was a huge Eric Church, Dirk Bentley. I kind of started becoming obsessed with their music and reading more into what they were doing as artists. Brad Paisley was one of them as well. And I knew that they wrote their own songs. And so in my mind, I thought like working with songwriters would be working with those kind of people. And then I started to realize slowly as I got here, like so much of the writers behind the artist. And then I became even more obsessed with the music, knowing that there were just songwriters that were behind Brad Paisley that I could work with. I ended up getting to work with a lot of them, actually. So, yeah, that's kind of the first songwriters that got me here, probably.
That's awesome. How long were you at Gayle?
Almost 3 years. I was their catalog manager and a tape copy room guy. Got to do a little bit. They let me pitch a little bit, and I got a couple cuts for Chris Stapleton and Radney Foster were some of my favorite first cuts on Little Big Town was my first cut, ironically. And then Randy Rogers Band was the second one I helped get cut.
That's awesome, man. Tell me, this is, a lot of our members are songwriters and artists, but I'm going to dive a little bit more into the publishing side of it. What was the process of getting those songs cut? What does it take to get a song cut as a publisher?
For me in that situation, Kimberly from Little Big Town got her hair cut next door. And I was still helping her like house sit and stuff like that, even though I wasn't their intern anymore and had a job, and take care of her animals. And so she would text me to make her a CD whenever she'd get her hair cut, and the publishing team at Gayle and I would put a CD together, and she'd come pick it up. And they cut a few songs off those CDs. One of them made a record. Rain on a Tin Roof was the one that they ended up cutting up for that record. So it's kind of, and that's just general, getting songs cut is such a weird thing because it can happen in so many different ways, whether you meet somebody out at night and they ask you to send them a song, give you the email, or you just send it to the A&R person, which is the easy way to do it. But yeah, that's kind of how that one happened. And the Randy Rogers one happened because there was just a cattle call. And Mike Owens, who was at Gayle at the time, asked me about some songs I thought would be good, and that was Damn the Rain was one of them. And so he brought that into the meeting and they cut it. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, pitching is an art. We've got a few of our members that recently just specifically said, I want to learn more about how to pitch songs. And I said, well, ultimately it comes down to relationships.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't
It gets easier the longer you're in the business because you start to know everybody. When you're first starting out, it's really hard because most people don't know who you are. They won't open your email. They won't take the meeting with you. But now it's a little easier, especially being at a place that SMACKSongs. It's easier to get your songs heard. So,
is it safe to say, and this is just for our members' sake, that a great song without the relationship probably won't get cut, but a good song with a great relationship could?
It's easier to get it cut faster, I would say. Great songs get cut, in my opinion, and it may take 10 years, it may take 1 year, it may take a month, but It's very rare that a great song, one that lasts the test of time, doesn't get cut. So if it's like we could get a brand new song this week that everybody's obsessed with at the company, and then in a few months we kind of forget about it, that's probably not a great song, but one that we keep going back to over and over again over the course of 5 years. Those are the ones that to me kind of stand out as like that's an actual great song and not just a good song. So.
Love that. Valuable information right there. Well, going in from the perspective of, and this could go a million different ways, we'll just see where it goes, a songwriter that's trying to get on the radar of a publisher, that may or may not know how to contact you necessarily, but let's just say there's a songwriter that thinks they're wanting to get a publishing deal. What is the first steps that they need to take to get on the radar of a publisher?
The first step is to start writing every day and find your crew in Nashville. And you kind of do that by going out and playing shows and meeting people, and saying yes to a lot of things that you normally wouldn't say yes to. I think it's the best way, because that allows you to develop as a songwriter, and you get to do what we tend to do with our new songwriters in the first year, is do that exact same thing. So the earlier you get that done, the faster you're going to move in this business in general, is to learn how to write songs, learn how to write with other people, write different types of genres, figure out if you're the lyricist, the melody person, the producer, or you're all three. And so that's kind of the first thing, is to find your crew. But to get in front of us, the best way is to just play out, because if you're good in this town, somebody's going to find out about it. You don't have to go and beat down doors and slide into people's Instagrams and stuff like that. Not that that hasn't worked in the past. There are no rules. But if you're good, somebody's going to find out about it. And eventually everybody's going to find out about it.
That kind of leads into the next question, was how do they get on your radar? Or a publisher's radar by playing out. So what have been some of the most unique ways that you've discovered some writers?
Interns. We've gotten a couple interns in the past that I've found to be extraordinary songwriters. We signed one, Emily Falvey. One of our former interns, Gray Robinson, just signed with Jonathan Singleton at 50 Egg. She's an incredible songwriter. And so there's some that you get to find that just kind of fall into your lap. A lot of them are just relationships that develop over time. They write with your songwriter and you get to know them. A lot of the writers that I've signed have been my friends kind of since I've started. Aaron S. Ice, Ryan Beaver, people like that. But there are the few occasions where, like Robin Palmer, one of her waitresses was Caroline Watkins. And she asked Caroline what she was up to, and Caroline's like, I'm out of a deal and I'm waitressing at, I think it's Sam's in Belmead. And Robin's like, we should come in for a meeting, and played her songs, and then we signed her. So it's just chance opportunity and putting yourself out there and continuing to develop your craft. Eventually it'll happen.
That's awesome. And I'm sure everyone's different, but if a writer gets on your radar and somehow, connects with you and comes in for a meeting, how long of a process normally for y'all is it to listen to music, to get to know the person before any offer of a deal or the thought of that comes up?
It matters. If we know, like when we signed Aaron S. Ice or Mark Beeson, for example, we know them, we've known them for years. It was easy to just offer them a deal the minute they were out of a deal, or the minute they were out of their old deal, we just offered it to them. Beyond that, it tends to take months to get to know the person, whether or not they're going to have a crew at SMAC that they can lean on of songwriters, not just staff. We always try to make sure that they have a good writing crew within the building to always rely on whenever you get rights canceled or whatever. So it does take time if you're a writer that we aren't that familiar with in terms of friendship or things like that. And at a small company, we do tend to take that really seriously, because we do want the culture at SMAC to be a specific culture. And if you get somebody who doesn't fit that culture, it can be like that one bad egg that kind of takes everything and makes it more about them and not the team, if that makes sense. So
that does. What would be the best type person that would fit in at SMAC at your company?
It's work ethic is probably the number one thing. It's work ethic and talent and being collaborative. A lot of times at small companies too, you do want to sign what you don't have. You don't want 10 people that do the exact same thing. But for the most part, it's people that want to work as hard as we do. That doesn't mean that we make our writers write 10 songs a week. Some write 3 songs, some write 5 songs. It's however they write best. But it is somebody who's going to put as much into their career as you're going to. We don't ever want to work with writers that, are going to spend more time on Xbox than they do on their career, because we're showing up every day and working really hard for them, and we want kind of the same thing out of them. And then people that are just a joy to be around. If you get somebody who's pretty negative every day that walks in complaining about the music business or whatever, it just kind of brings everybody down, and it's hard to create in those environments.
And who, I wasn't planning on asking this, but who is one writer that you've wanted to sign that for some reason you lost, that went somewhere else or didn't get a chance to sign?
Oh yeah, I mean, one of the first ones I remember was Maren Morris when I was at HoriPro, and she was already in kind of conversations with Big Yellow Dog at the time. One of my best friends was working at Big Yellow Dog, so I wasn't gonna kind of sneak in there. But Maren asked me for a meeting, I remember, at the basement, and I was like, I think Laura's really interested in signing you, so I don't know if I should do that. Emily Landis is one. I've always been a huge fan of hers. And there was at one time I wanted to sign her, but we, as a company, weren't able to, with financially and all that stuff. But she ended up going to BMG, where she wrote her first #1. So kind of writers end up where they're supposed to be. But those are two of them that I can remember.
Those are cool. Thanks for sharing those. On the opposite side of all that, what is something that writers do that is a complete repellent from wanting to work with them, from wanting to sign them, from even wanting to take a meeting with them?
I think sending me too many good songs. It's kind of one of the hardest things to do as a writer, I think, is recognizing where you're at in your career and knowing that even Shane and Josh don't write great songs every day. And to treat every song that you write as the next #1 smash. And if you're sending me those same kind of songs weekly or however it is, I'd rather somebody just send me one thing every couple months and say, hey, this one I think is really special, versus this is what I think is special. This is what I know is special to me as a writer, and that's usually what's going to be special to the listener, the publisher, the artist, all those things. So being a little bit aggressive in that sense. And also just like me personally, like if you're texting me late at night, or if you're texting me on the weekends, or if you're texting me during Christmas break, things like that, like once or twice, that's fine. But if it's a lot and you're not my own writer, that's probably a good way for me to get turned off a little bit. So it's just the wherewithal of, what's going on around you. So some can get a little aggressive.
That's great. What, trying to think how to craft this. When you hear songs that, I know a lot of times a songwriter will think, oh, this is the best thing I've got, so I'm going to play it for a publisher in hopes that they love it. And they only measure that against the songs that they've written. It's on the top of their pile, but it may be in the mid or way below the pile of what professional writers write. What are some of the things you see in songs that just keep them from being great?
A lot of it is whether they're writing it too close to their own story or they're chasing something else. I think that's what I find. I get a lot of younger writers that are trying to write the same stuff that Ashley Gorley writes. And you're never going to succeed doing that, because no label is ever going to be like, we'd rather have this guy's song versus Ashley. They're always going to go to Ashley's song because that's a proven commodity that works. And a lot of people write stuff that is so personal to them that it's hard for somebody else to relate to it. Like, how in the world it's such a unique thing for your story. It's going to be really, really hard for somebody to relate to it. And you have to find that balance of, this is me, and this is something that somebody else can relate to. And the best artists, the best writers have that ability to balance the putting themselves in songs and letting somebody else relate to it.
That's awesome. There's I heard a writer the other day that I mentor, and he just offered this willingly. I asked him, I said, what have you been up to lately? And he goes, I'm taking this entire year and I'm writing as if I have a publishing deal. And I'm like, okay, well that's interesting. And he explained me his thoughts behind that. But looking at it from a publisher standpoint, and for anybody that's out there that hears this and goes, oh, I've never thought about writing like I already have a deal. What does writing for a publisher look like for someone that has never had a publishing deal? What does that look like for them, to where if they want to start implying it now and work towards that kind of ethic, what would they be doing?
Write every day. Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. That's what we always tell our writers. Doesn't mean that you're booked every day. But but we expect you to be working 5 days a week. We work 5 days a week. You work 5 days a week. It's a 9-to-5 job for the most part. You got to go out there and meet people. You got to come up with ideas and just get in the mindset that you're a professional songwriter. As you know, you walk around, you write down ideas all the time. You get inspired by things all the time, and finding ways to find that inspiration to the next song. So yeah, to me, it's when you're a professional songwriter, you're a professional songwriter 24/7, but you're working 9 to 5 kind of thing.
Awesome. Who are some of the favorite writers that you have signed that you just, whenever they put a new song in that they've done, you just can't wait to open it up and see what they've created?
I mean, there's so many that I've been lucky to work with over the years. The first writer I ever signed was Ryan Beaver. He still writes for me. I'm such a huge fan of him and the way that he crafts lyrics and his melodies. And he's just so fun to work with as well. He's just a great guy, and he's easy to root for. I loved working with Sarah Turner, Mike Walker, Brindley Addington. Those were some of my favorite people. Right now, we're working with a guy named Josh Dorr that's kind of taken that massive step from, point C to point A. Like, just every song he turns in, he gets it, I guess, is what we always like to say. But he's really figured it out, and it's every song now. It's not, every 10 songs or every 20 songs like most published writers. It's every song we're like, okay, who does this go to, or when does so-and-so cut it? And those are just really fun. And I've been a part of, Emily Falvey, Aaron Essice, and, dozens of writers that I've got to sign, but it's always fun to see, I got to see Aaron take that step from being a good writer and a good producer to #1 hit songwriter, producer, #1 hit songwriter and producer, sorry. So you get to see those kind of moments happen, and those are really, really fun. And we also get to see Josh Jenkins just had his first 2 #1s. Robin Palmer signed him, but I get to work with him on a daily basis and get to see his hard work for the last 5 years turn into 2 #1s in less than a month. It's pretty incredible to see stuff like that.
How has publishing changed since coming into, you said 2006 is when you came in, to here we are 15, 16 years later? How has publishing evolved?
Yeah, it's changed a lot, because when I first started, it was still a CD digital download era, where you were trying to get on Blake or Kenny's record or McGraw's record or Faith Hill's or whoever it was, and you had to get on those records to survive. And you still have to get on those records, but there's also all these opportunities to get on independent records that can make a significant amount of money or have a significant amount of impact. So you're not just trying to get that one track on Blake Shelton, you're trying to get that one track on Lance Carpenter. Like, you're trying to get a cut on everything now, which is totally different than what we used to not even pay attention to independent stuff, because there was really no way for independent artists to make a significant amount of money outside of really Texas. Texas could. They always were good at moving product to make it worth it in the publishing business. But now we can get a cut on any independent artist, and it can get 30 million streams overnight because of TikTok or whatever it is. And so that's changed the business a lot. And even so, to the point where an independent artist can now make more money than getting just an album cut on Luke Bryan or Blake Shelton. So you have to, weigh those things. Now, granted, Blake and Luke still make the most money if they put your song out as a single, but and then sync is definitely something that didn't exist before, that is now a predominant part of the Nashville music publishing community. And our sync income over the last few years, it goes up by 100% almost every single year. So it just keeps increasing sustainably. And granted, the Applebee's commercial helped a lot with that. But yeah.
That's something I know very little about the sync world, and some of our members are sync writers, producers, and things like that. Explain just a little bit to folks out there that may kind of be in that production world, that want to get in the sync world, what they can do to create kind of a catalog to meet with a publisher to talk about sync.
Yeah, I personally haven't worked a ton in it in a direct fashion, but we've kind of built our sync relationships a lot more in Los Angeles to try to create an actual relationship with somebody who is in charge of the song supervisors of those shows. And that has allowed us an opportunity to pitch them a lot of songs, and they listen to a lot of songs, and it's easier for them to clear. I think that one of the most important things in sync is clearance, and how fast can you do it, especially for the cheaper syncs, whether it's the $300, $500 sync. They don't want to have to talk to 10 different people to get something cleared. So it's making sure that you have the stems ready, the music, the music with the singing, whatever it is that you can send them immediately, and make sure that you have all the writer information. I remember, Big Yellow Dog's huge into the sync world, and if you get a MP3 from them, they have all the information of that song in the MP3. You can go in and see the writers, how much they own, who are the publishers, and who's the publisher's contact. Because of that sync supervisor can go and find that information so fast. And it's a lot about quickness. Country doesn't get synced as much. It gets synced more now than it used to. But yeah, it's just creating the relationships in the sync world is probably the number one most important thing to growing any sort of sync business.
Let's touch a little bit on, and I think this is kind of a personal opinion for all publishers, but in your case, the person who is 100% of a writer or the person that's the writer artist, does that weigh in on your desire to sign them to a deal? Does it help? Does it hurt to be the artist, or does it depend on how good of an artist they are?
Yeah, I always want writers to write their way into an artist career. I don't want them to walk into just like I'm the number one hit songwriter or number one hit artist in the room. And I kind of like no rules. The fewer rules and the fewer walls you put around your career, the easier it is to succeed. And if you come in saying that I'm the only one allowed to cut my own songs, it's going to be harder to succeed. If you come in saying that I only cut songs that I wrote, it's going to be harder for you to succeed. So you have to come in with as few rules as possible. It doesn't mean that any of those other things aren't possible. You can have a career and write everything, Taylor Swift, but it just makes it harder to not have those rules. So when I sign somebody, you have to value those things like, is it going to be harder for your career to succeed, or is it going to be easier for your career to succeed? And I always want it to be as easy as possible. So I love working with artists with no rules. We have Old Dominion, and they're a perfect example, or we've worked with Old Dominion for years in the past, and they get songs cut on other artists. They cut their own stuff. They have no rules really on their career as to where that stuff goes. So that's always easier. Walker Hayes is a great example of, he writes with anybody. He'll write Christian, he'll write rap, he'll write pop, he'll do whatever. He'll produce your record. There's no rules in his career, so it just makes it easier. And it's also more fun that way too.
I love seeing everything that's happening for Walker now as a 14, 15-year overnight success, something like that for him. I was just recently flipping back through some old pictures and an album. I found one of me and him and Jenny Gill sitting on a porch somewhere on Music Row writing, and I think it was 2011. Yeah. And just sitting there thinking, let's try to write a great song to see where he's come from. That's been incredible. Sure. What's been some of the most exciting things just around Walker? I love Walker, and so what are some things around all this that's been exciting for him?
Getting to see, he writes with a huge group of people, and a lot of them have been with him since day one. One of those is Josh Jenkins, who's one of our writers, and getting to see them have success with him is arguable, and his family having success with him. Those are the two things that make it really, really special. That his daughter's a part of it, that his kids are a part of it, and then his best friends are a part of it, and then his neighbor Craig is a huge part of it. I mean, it's a true team effort to see all these things happen. But I get to see the hard work, front row and center, with the management team in the house, Walker in house, all those co-writers in house, and getting to see all that stuff come to fruition is a pretty special thing. Because it's a family, it's a team, and you get to see everything happen. It's amazing to be a part of it. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I love his social media with the family involved. So great. Well, let's jump out of work for a second, and we'll just go to kind of personal stuff. You touched on it earlier about being in the Army, and I know we've done some USO stuff together. But what is Lee Krabel passionate about?
I mean, it's finding ways to connect to the things that I love, whether it's through sports and the military and veterans and my job in songwriting. Those are kind of I've tried to connect to those things in more ways than one. I've been able to help the Baltimore Orioles in a charity thing for songwriters and be a part of spring training with them before. I'm really passionate about the USO and the work the USO does, and I've done over a dozen shows for the USO and had over 40 songwriters play for them. I also help the Ronald McDonald House do a fundraiser here at the Listening Room, actually. We've done it 3 years now and raised about $30,000 for the Ronald McDonald House with Josh Osborne and JT Harding and John Knight and people like that. So those are always fun to connect all the things that you love together, and I'm still trying to do that, and it's fun.
I love it. All right. Well, now let's shift into a little bit deeper things. What are 2 or 3 things about yourself that few people in Nashville know?
Oh, wow. That few people in Nashville know. I feel like I'm a pretty open book. I love being outside in the woods. Almost every morning I go out and walk in the woods, and I think maybe if you follow me on Instagram you may know this, but I do love animals. I love wild animals. I feed them. It's kind of a weird thing, but it kind of brings me at peace. Living out in the woods and having some property gives me a little quiet. I grew up really rural, very small town, and I grew up working on farms and baling hay and cleaning grain bins and things like that. And a lot of people are kind of shocked to hear that part. But yeah, those are kind of a couple things that are a little weird.
And then the hardest question is, what's one thing that hardly anybody knows about you?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like most people know the gist of me. But yeah, I mean, I was roommates with Brett Eldridge. I think that's a nice little fun fact. For a year, we moved here about the same time from the same place in Illinois. Billboard did an article about roommates when Seth England from Big Loud Shirt, Brett Eldridge, and I all lived together for one summer, the 3 of us. We're all from the same place in Illinois and grew up on the same highway and all moved here at the same time. Kind of all grew up in the business together, and they've had a lot more success than me.
Man, must be something about Illinois. I had an Illinois guy live with me for a little while, Drew Baldridge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he left the gazebo apartments when they doubled the rent one time. I'm like, dude, forget that, move into the guest room.
Yeah.
So he was in here earlier this morning doing an interview. It's crazy, but
Drew's a good guy.
He is. Yeah. He's a good man. Well, man, this has been incredible information. Yeah. Everybody at Music Row Coach is gonna learn a lot from it and grow from it. One of the last questions I always like to ask, just to kind of drive the point home, is how important is it for someone coming up in the music business to be a writer, to be an artist? How important is it to have a mentor or a coach?
Incredibly important. Just in life in general, to have somebody who has experience in things and knowing that they've already gone through the same stuff you're going through, and it's been incredible. And the best part about Nashville is everybody is so open to being that. I've been so blessed to have people like Tim Hunzy and Chris Van Velkum and people that have always been around whenever I had a question or needed to go to lunch or anything like that. And they were always in my corner and great champions of mine. And I've had great bosses like Robin Palmer and Liz O'Sullivan and Butch Baker that were always there as well. So it is wildly important to find somebody that you can lean on, because there's so many struggles, not only in the music business, but in life. And to have somebody to be like, hey, Tim Hunzy, so-and-so won't return my email. And for Tim Hunzy to be like, well, they never return my emails either. And then you feel a lot better about yourself, So it's just good to have people like that in your corner, and to just make life easier, to know that, like, hey, everybody else has failed too. Everybody else struggles. So you have to do it.
Awesome, man. Any parting words, any last bit of advice for artists or for writers or anything?
No.
That we haven't touched on?
Just work harder, because somebody else is going to work harder than you.
Love it. Work hard, y'all. Ladies and gentlemen, Lee Krabel, VP of SMACKSongs. Thank you so much, Lee. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.